if there was ever a man who needed no introduction, it's Gerd, but I'm going to introduce him anyway. For those of you who may not know that much about his background, Gerd Achenbach is the founder of Philosophical Practice and author of many books and internationally in-demand speaker. He also founded the first Society of Philosophical Praxis, whose chairman he still is, as well as the International Society of Philosophical Praxis, which he led until the early years of 2000 before he handed over to younger hands. In 1998, he organized and headed the 5-day International Congress on Philosophical Practice. That was the fourth one, in its birthplace, Bergisch Gladbach, near Cologne, Germany. He has given lectures at universities all around Europe, and since the 1990s, he has been leading training courses in philosophical practice, currently the Master Class in Philosophical Practice series. After having been translated into Spanish and Korean, the first authorized translation by Michael Picard was published in English in 2024, and this is a book entitled Philosophical Praxis, Origin, Relations, Legacy. It's available from Lexington Books, and will follow in 2026 another volume called On Right and Wrong. Gerd published Odo Marquard's magnum opus on the philosophical origins of psychoanalysis called Transcendental Idealism, Romantic Philosophy of Nature, Psychoanalysis. He lives with his wife Laura in the Alps near Meran, where they run the House of Philosophical Practice in the historical Villa Hartungen as a place of counsel and education. So once again, Gerd, welcome to the Agora, and thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah.
Oh, well, shall we get started without further ado? I have so many questions. I can only ask a few, and then, of course, we'll open up the mic in due course. And Michael Picard and Laura Achenbach will be helping us with translations, okay? So first, may we go back in time, Gerd? Please tell us, who were your first influences in philosophy? What attracted you to philosophy?
Ja, die erste Begegnung mit der Philosophie war alles andere als eine Liebe auf den ersten Blick.
Gerd's first meeting with philosophy was by no means love at first sight.
Ganz im Gegenteil. In der Schule Gemeinschaft Philosophie, an der ich natürlich teilgenommen habe.
Sorry.
Quite the opposite in school. He was
Right.
part of a working group, of a workshop, you can say, to philosophy.
Ja. Aber der dortige Lehrer, ein Doktor der Philosophie, machte nur Erkenntnistheorie von David Hume. Ein Jahr lang Erkenntnistheorie von David Hume. Es war furchtbar langweilig.
So for the whole year in school, they had a PhD in philosophy, a doctor of philosophy, and he did David Hume's epistemology the whole year long. That was all they did, David Hume, David Hume, David Hume. And it was very boring to Gerd.
Ja. Und ich dachte damals frei nach Bartleby von Melville, I would prefer not to.
Yeah.
So the British empiricists were not your cup of tea, but who attracted you? Which philosophers, if any, were you attracted to?
Ja, aber dann 1965, ich war noch in der Schule, passierte etwas ganz Wichtiges. Ich war beim Evangelischen Kirchentag in Köln.
So in 1965, while he was still in school, an extraordinary event took place that made a big difference to him. And it was a church congress at Cologne. I don't know the more details, but...
Und da gab es 3 Vorlesungen, die ich alle gehört habe. Die erste von Karl Friedrich Weizsäcker, die zweite von Max Horkheimer, die dritte vom Theologen Karl Rahner.
Yeah, so he heard there 3 lectures on freedom by Karl Friedrich von Weizsäcker, by Max Horkheimer, and by a theologian, Karl Rahner.
Ich habe nicht alles verstanden, aber von einem war ich ganz tief ergriffen. Ich habe gesehen, dass alle drei nicht nur geredet haben über irgendetwas, sondern dass sie das selber waren, was sie gesagt haben, dass sie selber als Person verstanden.
So, although he didn't understand everything that was said at the time, one thing struck him greatly about all three, and that was that they were not just saying something, they're not just talking about something, but they were what they were saying.
Genau, das war gewissermaßen schon der erste Schritt zur späteren philosophischen Praxis, dass man nicht nur von Philosophie redet, sondern sie verkörpern muss.
Right, so that was his first step, actually, already in high school, to philosophical practice, the idea that you must embody the philosophy and not just talk about it.
Great. Thank you. And that leads to then the next question, which is what motivated or inspired you to take the step of opening a philosophical counseling office? That's a large step outside the academy, as we well know. What was your inspiration to do this?
If I may, there was a few years between then and that led to that development in 1981.
Ja, also das waren im Grunde genommen drei Gesichtspunkte, die ich nur nennen will.
So there are three points that he would like to name about the origin of philosophical practice.
Der erste war, nachdem ich lange Philosophie studiert habe, wurde mir immer deutlicher, wie genau ein Witz von Leszek Kolakowski die Lage der Philosophie beschreibt. Leszek Kolakowski hatte gemeint, die Philosophie sei der komische Laden, in dem die Lieferanten zugleich die einzigen Kunden sind.
Okay, so he was after 15 years of academic work, he found a certain joke, found truth in a certain joke by a philosopher, and he said his name better than I can, but the Leszek Kolakowski. Kolakowski.
Yeah.
Who once said that philosophy is a ludicrous store where the delivery man is the only customer.
Ja. Das Zweite war, dass ich merkte, der Philosophie fehlt etwas ganz Wichtiges, nämlich die Praxis als ein Ort, wo sie sich bewähren muss.
Can you help with that, Laura? I just got distracted a bit there. Sorry.
So, secondly, his main insight and critique on academic philosophy was that philosophy had lost the possibility, even the possibility to fail and to prove itself in everyday life.
Damals war ein Wort von C.G. Jung, den ich sehr gründlich studiert hatte, war mir sehr wichtig. Der sagte, mit einer falschen Theorie kannst du sehr lange gut durchkommen. Du darfst sie nur nicht anwenden.
He's reminded of a statement by Carl Jung that was very important to him, that sorry, can you say it again, please?
You can live quite a long time with a theory as long as you're not trying to apply it.
Eine falsche Theorie.
Yeah, the wrong theory.
Ja. Das
You
heißt,
can live a long time with a false theory as long as you're not trying to apply it.
Exactly.
wir brauchen Gelegenheit zu scheitern, um zu lernen, um dazu zu lernen. Aus unseren Fehlern lernen wir.
We need the possibility of failing, of making errors in order to learn from this possibility. And this, just if I can clarify a little bit, this metaphor of the philosophy is a store where the delivery man is the only customer. This is the impossibility of failure. that is built into academic or certain kinds of philosophy. So what is the possibility of failure for philosophy now?
Das dritte war aber, immer mehr Studien zeigten, dass die allermeisten Menschen, die sich in Therapie begeben, eigentlich Fragen haben, die sie an die Philosophie richten müssten, weil ihr Leben schlecht gelebt wird, weil sie im Leben scheitern, im Leben nicht weiter wissen. Das sind aber eigentlich philosophische Fragen, die damit zusammenhängen.
Okay, so it also became obvious, and there were many studies that confirmed that the majority of those, and elsewhere I've heard Gerd talk about up to 80% of those who were in psychotherapy were burdened by problems about how to lead their life. They were life had gone wrong in some way for them and failed. And in some way, this is not profoundly. This is not a psychological question.
Ja, genau. Das heißt, damals habe ich bereits geahnt, was mir heute eine Gewissheit geworden ist. Und das habe ich in der ersten These von 11 Thesen neulich auf dem Weltkongress der Philosophie in einen Satz zusammengefasst. Aber jetzt erstmal Michael.
Okay, so this is what Gerd has tried to express in the first of these 11 theses that were presented in Rome in 2024, theses on the philosophical praxis, and the first is really that philosophical practice ushers in a post-therapeutic age. So the people going to therapy don't need psychological therapy in large part. They need something else. So this is the post-therapeutic age.
Das habe ich damals noch geahnt. Heute weiß ich, dass es so ist.
Okay, so back then he surmised that this was the case. He intuited that this may be the case, but now he's completely certain, and thus it's perhaps I overstated it there, but he's fully confident, and thus it ends up in this interesting set of 11 theses.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. You want to add more, Gerd? Go ahead. I have another question.
Ist mal gut.
Okay, it's okay. So this leads to another question. You were the only one doing this in Europe. You were the first one. You were the only one. Did you encounter obstacles? It's almost a rhetorical question because all of us who have been pioneers encountered initially some obstacles. Would you share with us any kind of objections or obstacles that you might have encountered when you first started practicing?
Ich mich ganz kurz
Ja.
übersetzen. Er sagt, also einerseits, also ob da irgendwelche Hindernisse waren. Er sagt, da alle Pioniere, sie alle eigentlich, immer mit Hindernissen zu kämpfen hatten, ob du da vielleicht einige teilen möchtest mit den anderen.
Also eigentlich Hindernisse nicht, sondern erfreulicherweise habe ich sehr viel Interesse gefunden. Sehr viel Interesse. Vor allem übrigens erstaunlicherweise von Psychotherapeuten, auch Psychoanalytikern und Psychiatern, die auch viel in meiner Ausbildung sind. Also eigentlich habe ich viel Interesse gefunden.
Okay, so the answer is perhaps surprisingly no. He didn't find many obstacles. In fact, on the contrary, he found a great deal of interest, especially, or not especially, but notably amongst psychiatrists, psychologists, and what was the other? Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Psychoanalytiker.
Oh,
Psychoanalysts, yeah.
Psychoanalysts, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Ja, und dann war allerdings auch das Interesse der Presse und der Medien sehr groß. Und das kann man nachlesen. Ich habe die Anfänge der philosophischen Praxis von 1981 bis 1994 in einer Chronik veröffentlicht, die man auf der Internetseite von uns nachlesen kann. Es gab wirklich weltweit ein großes mediales Interesse.
Okay, so there he's adding that in those first years there was also quite a lot of media interest worldwide, and a chronicle of all this attention and the early documents of the opening of the early years. The documentation of the early years of philosophical practice in Germany is published online and available for people to look through. Yeah.
Oh, great. Well, maybe you could share a link in the chat room or something, or share a link by email, and then we can bundle that with the production of this video.
Sure.
Ja, aber lieber Lou, das weißt du ja sehr gut, denn du hast ja auch mit deinem Buch Platon Project erlebt, was für eine starke Resonanz darauf kam.
So, Lou, you must know this this great because your book. Sorry, I just heard Plato, not Prozac, which I just heard the name in German, so I couldn't remember in English there for a moment. But what had such a worldwide reception and a very large reception. So
yes, of course. So our experience in the USA paralleled your experience in Germany, because the public was very receptive to this. And so were some philosophically minded psychologists and psychiatrists. But we had resistance from two main wings: the academic wing of philosophy itself, which did not consider what we were doing as philosophy, and also from largely the psychology profession, which felt threatened by the appearance of philosophers. And that's why I asked about your experience in Europe.
Naja, ja, also ich habe mit sehr, sehr vielen akademischen Philosophen ja gesprochen. Und was ich am allermeisten gehört habe, war, wenn ich von einer Beratung erzählt hatte, dass sie dann sagten, das könnte ich nicht.
Okay, so what he has heard mostly from academic philosophers, and he's spoken to many of them, when he has told them in detail about a case that he has gone through, what he's heard from them again and again is that I could not do.
Ja. Und in der Tat, die akademische Philosophie bereitet auf die philosophische Praxis nicht vor.
Right. So the point being that academic philosophy simply does not prepare people for the kinds of encounters that are in philosophical praxis. It doesn't claim to, and it doesn't do it.
Die akademische Philosophie macht am ehesten noch einen Lehrer der Philosophie, der erzählt, was Philosophen gedacht haben, aber sie machen eigentlich keine Philosophen. Aber als Philosophen sind wir in der Beratung gefragt.
Okay, so I forgot about the first part. So can you help a little bit, Laura, with that?
So what academic studies are doing is mostly they prepare for teaching philosophy,
yeah.
But that's not enough for philosophical practice, as you know very well. So for being a philosophical practitioner, you need really to be a philosopher, and that's something completely different. Yeah. So of course there were these, they felt threatened in a way and also criticized, because it is a critique. That's quite a good understanding of what was happening. It is a critique. And if I may add, in the last years, in the last 10, 15 years, maybe, we have more and more requests from psychologists and from psychotherapists. They are experiencing themselves that there are people coming to them with questions they are not able to answer in this setting of psychotherapy, and they should not.
Yeah.
And so they are heading for philosophical practice more and more. And this is quite it's a nice development, because they are in need themselves. So we meet there.
Yes, and we're experiencing the same thing in the USA, Canada also, because the training, I think, anyway, from my perspective, the training of the psychologists in psychotherapy is now outmoded by developments in the world, and they are no longer necessarily equipped to handle the kinds of problems that they're seeing today. And many of them, of course, including present company, I see in the audience, recognize that the philosophical problems are more fundamental for certain people. Yes, so that seems to be a common experience.
Ich würde das mal so sagen. Wir als Philosophen in der Praxis brauchen durchaus auch die Kenntnis der Psychologie. Aber noch mehr brauchen die Psychologen die Philosophie.
Okay, so we as philosophers in practice need to have knowledge of psychological knowledge, but even more so, psychologists in practice need to have philosophical
Education.
education. Let me say, I want to say no.
Yes, and because the two disciplines split, we are really doing a job of bringing together what I would call the parent and the child. I mean, if you accept this, historically, psychology is really the child of philosophy. Philosophy is the parent discipline, and we are reuniting with them in a very positive way.
If I can maybe add a point to here, like it was mentioned earlier, and when you spoke about Gerd's early beginnings in philosophy and the work of Odo Marquard. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it correctly, which is very much about the philosophical background to psychoanalysis, and so I've seen how Gerd. I don't know if this is quite fair, but sort of thinks of Freud and Jung in philosophical terms, perhaps not as philosophers or not as outright philosophers, but as philosophers in disguise, perhaps from themselves or something like that. I hope maybe that's my comment rather than Gerd.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
Okay.
That's fair enough. Well, I remember a letter. I came across a letter from Freud to one of his correspondents way back, and Freud had written that he was seeing a profession in the future which did not exist today, which should not, he said, belong to doctors and should not belong to priests. So I think he was identifying us. What do you think?
ja. Ja, hast du verstanden? Also, ja, Freud hat er hat in einem frühen Brief von Sigmund Freud jetzt gelesen, dass er schon einen Beruf kommen sieht, der noch nicht da ist, wo Menschen zu jemandem kommen, der eben kein Doktor ist und aber auch kein Priester ist. Und er meint, ja, Freud hat uns wahrscheinlich auch schon antizipiert. Also das ist, ja.
Ja, genau wie er in einem Brief zur Lou Salome, die sagte, du musst mal Freud lesen.
Nietzsche.
Du musst mal Nietzsche lesen. Da sagte Freud daraufhin, nein, das macht er nicht mehr. Er wollte auch noch selbst was entdecken.
Ja.
Und bei anderen gemeint, wir sind in den Hafen Schopenhauers eingelaufen. Also Freud hatte die Beziehung zur Philosophie.
Ja. Er hatte sie stark.
Yes. I'm sorry, I'm not quite sure. I got the point, but I'm not going to get it exactly. I actually happen to have a quotation from Freud that I use in slides where he says what I think Gerd is referring to there. Someone asked him about Nietzsche, his influence of Nietzsche. He said, no, I have to stop reading Nietzsche in order to preserve my originality or something along those lines is what the English.
I have a thought for myself, so I will not read Nietzsche anymore.
Have a thought for himself.
Lou Salome, by the way. Lou Salome. It was a letter.
Right. So
okay. So this leads to a more substantive question, and I really would look forward if Gerd could please elaborate a little bit and share some thoughts on method, because we have many who practice a certain method, we have many who do not practice any method. Could Gerd throw some light on this issue, method or no method, or method of no method? What is your view, please?
Ja, also diese Idee, nämlich die Methode der Nichtmethode, habe ich selbst nie verkündet.
So Gerd has never himself used the term the method of no method.
Nein, sondern was ich meine ist, es gibt keinen generalisierbaren Zugang zu einem individuellen Leben, sodass jeder Fall von uns verlangt, einen eigenen Zugang zu ihm zu finden.
Okay, so what his point is that there is no general way of access to an individual's life. So every counseling session needs to find a unique understanding.
Ja, also ich gebe ein Beispiel. Ja?
For example,
Ich begegne einem hedonistischen Zyniker, der ganz anders als einem Menschen, der mit seinem Glauben kämpft.
so
Ja, ja, bitte.
so obviously Gerd would meet and respond to a hedonistic cynic in ways that are completely different than somebody who was struggling with faith.
Richtig, ja. Oder ich spreche natürlich völlig anders mit einem Menschen, der zum Tode verzweifelt ist, als mit jemandem, der gerade nach einem Weg ins Leben sucht.
Right. So, and he would speak in completely different ways to someone who was, I don't have the right phrase here, but wanted to die, to put it more elegantly, was contemplating suicide or close to suicide. He would talk to someone like that completely differently than he would to somebody who's seeking a way into life.
Ja, hat er mit der sokratischen Weg schon angesprochen?
Nee.
Ah ja.
Yeah.
Okay, that's very interesting. And I mean, I totally agree in the sense that every client is unique, every dialogue is unique, and we should not have preconceptions when someone comes to the room about how it's going to go. Yes, but many of our colleagues do want to have a method, and this is a very interesting point of debate between us, really.
But to hear the difference, if I may, between what you just said and what Gerd was speaking about, as the phrase that access to an individual's life. So we don't know, nobody knows how a session's going to go, as you say. But the problem is, how do you have some kind of entrance into the person's life, and there's no general methodology or way to do that. And if that's your first goal, you can't be speaking about methods, but.
Sure, but we want our clients to philosophize, do we not? Is this part of your way of working, that you want your clients to be philosophers themselves?
Also das ist jetzt der Knackpunkt. Er fragt, ob es nicht darum geht, dass unsere Gäste philosophieren. Geht es nicht eigentlich darum, dass sie Philosophen werden?
Nein. Nein, doch nicht. Das ist eine Frage der Didaktik der Philosophie. Aber das ist nicht die Frage der philosophischen Praxis.
Michael?
So, yes, so the goal of trying to make someone into a philosopher is a question of philosophical teaching or didactics. And philosophical practice is not that. It's not teaching and making people into philosophers.
Yes, that was not my question, though. I think we've got something lost in translation. I'm trying to ask whether, for example, I would like my clients to philosophize. I'm not trying to teach them to be philosophers, but I want them to be philosophical in the way that they approach life.
Also insoweit die Menschen eine gewisse philosophische Fähigkeit erlangen müssen, um gut zu leben. Insoweit ist es richtig, was du sagst, Lou.
So what you say is correct in to an extent, and help me with the extent there, Laura.
So if someone is able to develop the possibilities, sometimes someone needs help in a more philosophical approach to his life, because philosophy then means to, for example, to understand better the own life and the relations happening.
Aber dazu muss nicht Kant und nicht Hegel und nicht Schelling und nicht Schopenhauer und nicht Kierkegaard und nicht Wittgenstein und nicht
So all
Heidegger.
of these.
Die muss man nicht gelesen haben.
Yeah.
There's a little X behind them all.
Yeah.
Hinter mir sind die Denker, die hier wichtig sind.
Für die philosophische Praxis. Yeah.
Right. So, for the goal of entering person's life, as we talked about before, you don't need to go through Schopenhauer site or bring them up, but this is of course something you want if you want to make people into philosophers. To some extent, to philosophize is also to have enter a discussion with those, right? And that's also not necessarily what's going on in practice. So I'm a bit distant from what Gerd said, but
no, it's okay. So the main point is that we need to offer philosophy, but our guest is not. He does not need to philosophize. We are. This is the challenge is up to us and not to our guest, of course.
Okay, so there is then a disparity of some kind which we accept between the guest and the counselor.
Ja, da gibt es natürlich ein Gefälle zwischen dem philosophischen Praktiker und dem Gast.
Das will ich hoffen.
I'm sorry, what was?
You should hope so.
Well, hope so. Yeah, well, sure. Okay, let me ask you a different question. I have really three questions, and then we're going to open up the mic. But when you started, could you have imagined, Gerd, that this would go worldwide? I mean, it really is now a thriving global movement in many countries and cultures, as you know. Did you envision this? Did you imagine that this could happen? Or were you not really even concerned about the future?
Also, ich habe diese Entwicklung teils kommen sehen und habe sie begrüßt und zugleich auch gefürchtet.
So this development he wished for and also feared.
Okay, why we understand why the wish, why the fear?
Ja, klar. Also warum ich das gehofft habe, das muss ich gar nicht erläutern. Aber wieso ich das auch befürchtet habe, das muss ich erläutern.
Kannst weitermachen, das hat er gerade gesagt.
Also,
well, he needs to explain the fear, not the hope. That goes without
saying. Ja. Weil ich glaube, ich bin überzeugt, dass die Philosophie als der Ernstfall der Philosophie, die philosophische Praxis als der Ernstfall der Philosophie überfordert sehr viele Philosophen, die sich dafür befähigt glauben, es aber nicht sind.
Okay, so the philosophical practices, there's a formula here. I'm going to take this in pieces. There's a formula here that's very important. That philosophical practice is the Ernstfall of philosophy. That is the serious case. Yeah. The seriousness of philosophy that's what philosophical practice is all about. And in most cases, academically educated philosophers are not able to rise to this challenge.
Ja, ich will sagen, was ich mit Ernstfall der Philosophie meine. Man kann sich in einem Seminar schön über Theorien des Selbstmords auslassen und sagen mit Camus, der Selbstmord ist die eigentliche Frage der Philosophie. Aber wenn einer vor dir sitzt, der sich hatte umbringen wollen, dann wird's ernst. Und dann sind wir gefordert.
Okay, so to explain this idea of the seriousness or the serious case of philosophy being philosophical praxis, just imagine what happens. You sit down amongst philosophers to have a philosophical discussion about suicide, and you can talk about Camus, you can talk about Hegel and Heidegger, you can bring up a very interesting discussion. But when somebody is sitting in front of you contemplating suicide, that sort of discussion is not in order, right? There's that something else entirely is required, but philosophy, it's philosophy.
Und das ist jetzt die Gründung für meine Befürchtung. Weißt du,
And that's the ground of his fear.
Ja, wenn Menschen Philosophie studiert haben und Unsinn reden, ist das kein Problem. Aber wenn sie in der Praxis versagen, dann schädigt das Ansehen der Philosophie insgesamt.
Ja, und dass das Menschen
Hilfe gebraucht hätten. Und dass die Menschen die Hilfe gebraucht hätten. Ja.
Okay, so it's all fine if philosophers in their theorizing opine this or opine this and say whatever they want, right? There's no harm. But if in the context of a serious case of philosophical praxis, they speak nonsense, then they bring shame upon all of philosophy. And all, not to mention the harm that's done to the individuals in question.
Und da darf ich vielleicht sagen, häufig sind ja diejenigen, die zu uns in die Praxis kommen, diejenigen, die überall sonst keine Hilfe gefunden haben. Also die waren in Therapien, die haben Medikamente genommen und sie haben viele, viele Möglichkeiten ausprobiert. Und das heißt häufig, es ist bei uns sehr häufig so, ist es wirklich sozusagen eine letzte Möglichkeit, noch einmal einen guten Weg zu finden. Und wenn da jemand versagt, ist das nicht harmlos.
Okay, so nice point. So it very often happens in their practice. People come to them after they've sought out many other means of help. And it's very much a last resort. And if in that context one philosophizes nonsense, then the harm is very serious.
Yes, of course. But we would hope, philosophy is often the last resort. But we have a special responsibility. And of course, this is why our training is different from purely academic training, right? Because we think about the ethics, we think about the dynamics of human relationships. This is something that academic philosophers are not concerned with at all, usually. So totally, we agree about this. But this brings up another question. There's a different kind of fear that we experience, and I'll be very brief, that success can bring failure also. As we began to succeed and gain respect as a kind of profession, there was a lot of discussion about recognition by governments for what we do, just as all other professions are recognized. But this is a problem also, because we do not believe that governments should be regulating philosophical ideas or thought or conversations. So is this something that's occurred in Germany, or has it occurred to you, this question of being regulated, being recognized, which entails regulation? And of course, regulation by bureaucrats would be anathema to philosophy. So how do we stand on that issue? How do you stand on that in Germany, Gerd?
Er fragt danach, ob wir das Problem auch kennen, das sich mit einem großen Erfolg einstellt, nämlich viel Anerkennung dazu führt, dass jetzt eben auch eine staatliche Anerkennung vielleicht gewünscht und gefordert ist. Und er steht dem sehr ablehnend gegenüber, weil er natürlich sagt, wie du ja auch, dass sobald die staatliche Anerkennung da ist, müssen wir uns eigentlich deren Regularien unterwerfen.
Richtig.
Und das ist das Ende der philosophischen Praxis. Ja. Und er fragt, ob wir so etwas als Entwicklung und als Problem auch in Deutschland ähnlich beobachten können.
Ich mache es kurz. Was das Politische betrifft, bin ich unpolitisch. Denn nur der Unpolitische kann das Problem des Politischen begreifen.
Let me try. That's a good one. So he wants to be brief here, and he says, I hope I don't get this wrong, that he is not political, and only the non-political can understand the political.
Yes, the problem. Yeah.
Das Problem des Politischen.
The problem of the political.
So you agree completely on this aspect.
Yeah.
I'll take your word for it for now. But just a couple of quick questions, then we open the floor, okay? So Gerd, do you think that the movement will just continue to grow? And that, to me, what we see in America are that younger philosophers have no prejudices against practice. They want the theory because they love philosophy, but they see that it's also possible to practice. And we have many young people now who want to be practitioners because they see that it can happen. So is this something that you are also witnessing in Europe? And do you see this as more or less the future of the global movement?
Naja, die Nachfrage ist da. Das merke ich ja ich habe jetzt 7 Lehrgänge zur philosophischen Praxis gemacht. Ich mache jetzt die Meisterklasse, gleich 2 nebeneinander. Es gibt diese Nachfrage in der Tat. Denn erst durch die philosophische Praxis hat ja die Philosophie den Aspekt gewonnen, auch ein Beruf sein zu können.
Okay, so he's offered 7 or more courses, master courses in philosophical praxis, and people are
Jeweils 3 Jahre lang.
and
Each
3 what?
For 3 years, and
Oh,
now
3 years. These are 3-year programs that he's been offering, and 7 times. And the people are drawn to it in order to practice philosophy. I think there's a little bit subtler point there, but that's why they want to come to it. Not just young philosophers, but having been to a couple of sessions.
from sessions.
Yeah.
So that's very, also much. I don't know if you make the same experience in the USA, Lou. We have more and more the doctors coming to us. Also die Ärzte are they are, because they need to talk to people in such a serious way. They are also not prepared to. And they have so many questions also touching existentialist problems, and they want to prepare themselves for this. And so, yes, it's growing, definitely.
Yeah. And we have the same. Yes, we share this in parallel with you. We recognize, because the more, I would say, aware doctors and psychologists and pastoral counselors, they all are seeing philosophical problems when they work with their clientele. So they want to add a philosophical practice to their profession in order to render a better service.
Right.
Yeah.
And I can just add maybe a comment on that, because when I visited some week-long sessions that were part of these master's programs that Gerd is offering, that's who was there: physicians, psychiatrists. There were some philosophers, counselors of different kinds, and yeah, that's what I saw.
Yes, and social workers also. Interestingly, many social workers are coming for this.
Also there, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, one more question, and then we'll open the floor. We have a wonderful audience with a lot of practitioners, so I'm curious to hear what will develop. But one more question, if you don't mind, Gerd. And it was put in the chat room earlier. Artificial intelligence is disrupting very many professions now, and I'm not so sure we're threatened by it. But what is your view about artificial intelligence? It seems to be affecting psychology. It's not yet affecting us too much, except our students can't write essays anymore. But aside from that, how do you see the advent of AI and philosophical practice?
Vielleicht ist das die deutlichste Unterscheidung zwischen einer üblichen Psychotherapie und der philosophischen Praxis. Die Psychotherapie kann wunderbar durch eine künstliche Intelligenz ersetzt werden. Die Originalität des philosophischen Praktikers niemals.
Okay, so what he's saying is that perhaps there's no clearer distinction between psychoanalysis and philosophical practice than with regard to this. Artificial intelligence can wonderfully implement psychoanalytic sessions, but it has implemented philosophical counseling sessions never.
Right. Well, never say never, because it could happen. I mean, I'm just seeing that if it works, I think psychologists are like the guinea pigs for this.
Yeah.
I think you'll get about as good essays as you do from AI as you do philosophical counseling.
Right. It will be very shallow and limited, but still it's making inroads, is it not?
And nobody will learn from it.
Yes, that's fair enough. Okay, I think it's time to open the floor. I would welcome our participants. All right, Katarina has already raised her hand. Go ahead, Katarina, and then Rick, please unmute. Welcome.
Hello, everyone, and hello, Mr. Achenbach. It's a gift to have you with us today. So thank you for coming. And thank you, Lou and Michael and Laura. I have a couple of questions. So to take them in order, one is that, as was already mentioned, the movement of philosophical counseling is a very globalized but also decentralized movement, where in a way every philosophical counselor is evolving it in their own way. And I wonder, in your view, whether you think it would be important for the field of philosophical counseling to mature for a longer time within a limited geographical center of some kind, where the process and the results of it could be sort of studied and cultivated. So that's one question.
Okay, stop there, please. Let us translate.
Nee, kann ich nicht. Ich werde es kurz übersetzen. Also Katharina fragt oder stellt zunächst einmal fest, dass die Bewegung der philosophischen Praxis ja international und weltweit sehr dezentralisiert ist. Und wenn ich das richtig verstanden habe, ich bin mir nicht ganz sicher, wenn ich es richtig verstanden habe, ist die sich anschließende Frage, ob du der Meinung bist, dass es gut wäre für eine Zeit auch, also um es zu lernen, glaube ich, an einem Ort zu sein, um dann auch wirklich die Ergebnisse über einen längeren Zeitraum beobachten zu können und daraus lernen zu können. Ich hoffe, ich habe es richtig verstanden. Michael?
Die Frage habe ich nicht ganz richtig verstanden.
Sorry, I muted, but yes, you did a great job. I was listening carefully.
Okay. Thank you, but what we don't really get the question inside. Yeah. So what really is the question? To stay located in one?
Oh, okay. Let me explain just a bit more. Right now, everyone who is a philosophical counselor has received their training wherever they happen to have received it in philosophy, and then they've been certified maybe by APPA or some similar organization, but then each philosopher goes back to wherever they came from and implements it in a very individualized way, rather than there being some center with a sort of maybe targeted population. For example, I could imagine this occurring in a university setting, where there would be several philosophical counselors all housed in the same place, and there would be real feedback and kind of a real possibility to study its effects and grow the field of philosophical counseling in that geographical home. If that makes sense.
Okay.
Thank you. That clarified it. And I will translate just a minute. Also das heißt, sie fragt, also jetzt ist es halt so, jeder dort, wo er es möchte, hingeht, in den USA zu Ihnen oder sonst wo, und sich zertifizieren lässt als philosophischer Praktiker oder eben auch nicht, das hat sie nicht erwähnt, aber ob es nicht sinnvoll wäre, einen Ort zu haben, wo sozusagen mehrere philosophische Praktiker gemeinsam arbeiten, wo man auch hinkommen kann, um es zu lernen und wo dann im Grunde genommen die Idee auf eine intensivere Weise vielleicht auch entwickelt werden kann. Ist ein bisschen, was wir jetzt machen.
If I can add just to that a little bit, I think part of the question involved not just the place, ort, but a geographical location. So I think there might be a cultural difference and a specific group of people that are maybe in need of those services. Or...
Das ist auch mit kulturellen Differenzen natürlich. Ne?
Ja. Also genau das ist die Idee, die wir unter anderem auch mit dem hiesigen Haus der philosophischen Praxis verbinden. Einen internationalen Ort, die Forschung auch und das Nachdenken über die philosophische Praxis hier zu bündeln und zu zentralisieren.
Sorry, Laura, help me out a little bit. I got some of that, but...
So, amongst other ideas and possibilities we have here, and we are very, very grateful for that, our house, where we are now, had this idea, in effect. And we can only, realize it here, of course. We cannot realize it on other places in the world. But we thought about giving room for other philosophical practitioners, also international colleagues, to come here to have this some kind of intensity also of speaking to each other, of developing ideas, and also regarding the specific problems. For example, they meet in their surroundings and with the people they are talking to, and this, there are huge differences. So as much as we can do, we agree to you, this is necessary, and we are providing it partly as much as we can. And it would be, I think, some advantage if there were other institutions also. But at university, we have some difficult experiences with that. So the idea is there, but it does not succeed over the years. So we are doing it in our own way.
Setzt noch eines hinzu.
Ja.
Wer hierher kommt, kommt ja nicht nur ins Haus der philosophischen Praxis, sondern in ein europäisches Paradies.
So he wants me to add. So if someone is coming to us here in the house of philosophical practice, it's not only coming to philosophical practice and to Gerd, of course, but also into a European paradise. Sorry for that, but it's really true.
I'm going to have to intervene here and as an eyewitness and confirm what Gerd has said. I've been there. It's really wonderful. There was something like what Katarina was talking about. Like there were this confluence of people. Now, it wasn't a local population that they were trying to serve, but they had their local populations, and it was a place to go for a kind of repose and for philosophical reflection about not so much their lives, but their work lives and there is a kind of intensity that's possible there, and I think there's room.
Yes.
Also, Epikur hatte nur einen Garten. Wir haben ein Tal mit wundervollen Bergen ringsherum.
Epicurus merely had a garden. He's got like this mountain valley in the Italian Alps, all right?
Okay, sounds better. It sounds better than the garden. But I think back to Katerina for a moment. We have a kind of ambivalence, and I want to ask Gerd if his view on this. We see the emergence of graduate programs in philosophical practice. Many universities on several continents now have graduate programs. This might be a good thing, but it could also, from at least my perspective, be a problem if it starts to get normalized, regularized. We are not like dentists. We don't have one best way to do anything. And the danger of having a university program is that it's going to become like a cookie cutter mold out of which the practitioners are stamped. It will cease to be individualistic, and that's a fear. Would that be a concern of Gerd's as well? I think so.
Ja, das kann man ja auch so sagen. Nicht nur werden die Gäste in der Beratung als Individuen wahrgenommen, sondern Philosophen selber sind ja extreme individuelle Gestalten. Vergleicht man einen Wittgenstein mit Heidegger oder Wittgenstein mit Adorno. Das sind ja derart, oder nehmen wir mal das Beispiel Schopenhauer und Hegel. Beides Philosophen. Aber da liegen Welten dazwischen. Philosophie lässt sich nicht standardisieren.
Okay, so philosophy does not allow itself to be standardized. Think about the vast differences between different philosophers. He listed, Schopenhauer and Hegel, and I forget the earlier ones that were mentioned there, but Wittgenstein and...
Yeah, you can name whoever you want.
Yeah, they're just vastly different people. And so, the idea that some program is going to develop a program or a cookie cutter to, mass produce philosophical counselors is a concern he shares with you, Lou.
Yes, well, good. But I think that we actually resemble, if you could translate this, I ran across a description of the New England idealists, Emerson and Thoreau and Louisa May Alcott and Nathaniel Hawthorne, that community of New England idealists. And they said of themselves, And I try and translate this somehow literally. They said we were a community of like-minded people, no two of whom thought alike.
Ja. Also er hat gerade den neueren englischen Idealismus studiert, also Emerson, Thoreau und diese ganzen Leute. Und da gibt es ein Sprichwort sozusagen, oder sie haben sich selber im Grunde genommen verständigt über den Satz, das ist sozusagen eine Gemeinschaft von Menschen, die gleich denken, aber wo keiner so denkt wie der andere.
Ja, sehr gut.
Ja.
Very good.
Yeah, thank you. I think we want to be like this also. We are like-minded, but we're all different. And
Yeah,
vive la différence, yes?
Ja,
Ja, ja.
Okay, thank you. Katerina, I hope that helps something a little bit. You have one more question, go ahead.
One more. First of all, thank you for the answer and also for the invitation that you extended, which I think German speakers in our group would be, would do well to take you up on that. The second question is about the point you made about whether people who study philosophy as academics are in a position to help regular individuals with urgent life questions. And you mentioned how, someone who can talk about Camus and others with fluency isn't necessarily in a position to help someone who's, in danger of committing suicide or something. And so I'm wondering if there's some kind of training that you believe needs to be introduced for people to become philosophical counselors that's subsequent to their training in academic philosophy, because arguably academic philosophy trains you to understand what other people think, but it doesn't necessarily train you to be a philosopher yourself and to apply philosophy to your own life. So before we kind of embark into philosophical praxis, where we try to help other people think about life questions, is there some kind of training that needs to be established for philosophical counselors to sort of learn to apply philosophy to their own lives? And should this be a continuous training of some kind?
Genau, die Kurzversion der Frage ist, ob du hast ja darauf abgehoben, dass das akademische Studium nicht ausreichend auf die philosophische Praxis vorbereitet, und sie fragt jetzt, ob du der Meinung bist, dass es im Anschluss an ein akademisches Studium noch eine spezifische Weiterbildung zum philosophischen Praktiker geben sollte. Und da einerseits auch, ob die kontinuierlich sein sollte, und sie hat aber davon auch gesprochen, ob es darum, also dass man erstmal lernen sollte, philosophische Fragen auf sich selber anzuwenden. Also das, was sie mit Apply gesagt hat, also es ist war auch zentral. Also
ja, es soll Weiterbildung geben. Ja, kurz und gut.
Yes, of course it's needed,
Yeah.
and that's why he's offering it for over all these years. And it's very necessary. And as you said, that's something we are doing it together now for several years. So I can say you are completely right in saying that it's the philosophical practitioner himself who needs to, not to apply philosophy.
Right.
So that's really a big difference. He's not for applying philosophy, but for becoming philosopher. So that's something you need to, that's taking some time, of course. And you also need maybe someone whom you can learn from. And that's why we are offering this, and there are other people who are doing it. It's very difficult to do it. And it's because, and we already had this aspect, because you cannot make a standard for it. You cannot say we are doing this, and when you have done this for several years, then you're done. You're a philosopher now. So that's not working like that. So it's also these courses we are offering are in a way individuals. They are, every time it's a new journey, it's a new adventure, and we don't know what will happen. It's open-ended in a way.
Can
So
I also add to that, perhaps? Oh, sorry, did I?
No.
just from my experience there, that there in those sessions, Camus and Hegel and Marx and all the philosophers can certainly come up. And when in the training of the philosophers in philosophical praxis. So earlier, the idea that there's something inappropriate about citing all these philosophers when you're dealing with someone who's considering suicide, even though they may be relevant. When you're talking to people who want to become philosophical practitioners about how to deal with these kinds of situations in general, then those philosophers are relevant. They do come up, and thus they get pictures on the wall there behind Gerd.
Yes, not only philosophers, by the way, but many novelists.
Yes.
Because we have, and I think Lou will agree, we are close to art. We are close to music, to literature, to the paintings. That's our closest, they are our closest friends, and not science. So that's why it's like that.
Yeah.
Yes, I totally agree. And that's why in Asia, particularly, there's a rise of humanities therapy, where they're expanding the circle to include writing, poetry, other forms of art, which actually become philosophical practice at a point. Yes.
Yeah.
Also, if I can maybe add another point that I was just trying to amplify here, that point which Laura just made also brings up that the philosophical practitioner needs to relate philosophically to the culture around them, to the cultural productions around them, and to respond to those. And being able to do that is very much like being able to respond to individuals who come and from a given culture and practice.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Thank you, Michael. I hope that gives you food for thought, Katerina. And now let's go on to Rick and Patricia. Been waiting patiently. Rick, please unmute and go ahead. Nice to see you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Great to be here, Gerd. I reviewed your book, so it's nice to meet you. Um, Katarina Efaristo, she asked my question pretty much, so I'm going to tweak it just a little to try to get a little more information out of Gerd on this topic, because it's the most interesting thing to me right now. I'm working on the idea myself of how do you convert a philosopher, and also both you and Lou mentioned doctors and others who want philosophical counseling training. How do you convert someone who's not a philosophical counselor into a philosophical counselor? And some of them they have PhDs in philosophy, but they're not really philosophers. So, like, what's the secret sauce in your 3-year program? What is it? Look, I did a 3-year program in Gestalt psychotherapy, and everybody there was a licensed clinical psychologist or social worker already practicing, but they had no skills. So they joined this postgraduate institute to learn. And all we did every week was practice playing the role of counselor and client, just rotating in and out. That's what we did. So just doing it, as Aristotle might say, there's reference to a philosopher, doing X is how you become good at doing X. But I'm curious to hear, what's the essence of that 3-year program? What's the main idea?
Okay,
Am I pushing a little bit more than Katharina?
Yeah, make a quick translation. Also seine er hatte eigentlich eine ähnliche Frage wie Katharina.
Oh.
Ein bisschen, oder wie du es dir denkst, jemanden zu einem philosophischen Praktiker zu machen. Also er hat von convert someone into a philosophical practitioner, also von der Konversion quasi gesprochen. Und er selber kennt es aus der Gestalttherapie, wo sie eigentlich immer nur Übungen gemacht haben, also quasi Übungen als Rollenspiele, ja, also Therapeut und Klient und so. Und er würde jetzt sehr gerne dein Geheimnis erfahren, was du vor allem in dem 3-jährigen Lehrgang natürlich machst, den wir jetzt ja so nicht mehr machen. Jetzt ist es die Meisterklasse, aber ja, was ist dein Geheimnis?
The secret sauce.
Ja, also Geheimnisse schont man, aber man verrät sie nicht.
Did you get it, Michael?
No. I know it's a good one.
So secrets is something you spare and you do not tell them.
Oh.
So, but, okay.
Ja,
aber das wird,
also alle Wie-Fragen sind ganz schwer zu beantworten, weswegen wir die Meisterklasse machen. Und da sage ich gleich ein Wort dazu.
So every attempt to answer a question who's beginning with how do you do that?
A how question, yeah.
Yeah, the how questions are always, they are always dangerous. And he will continue.
Ja, aber die Meisterklasse, das ist so etwas wie in der Musik oder in der Malerei auch. Ein Schüler wohnt einem Meister bei und sieht, wie er es macht. Und dann allmählich wächst er da hinein. Ob das jetzt eine Dirigenten- oder eine Meisterklasse für Violine oder Klavier ist, der Meister schaut und kommentiert. Und das machen wir hier auch. Genau das. Jeder muss seinen eigenen Stil, seine eigene Art und Weise finden. Und darin muss er gefördert werden.
Okay, so it's much like in painting or in music to learn to be a painter or a composer. You live with a master. You live with someone, that wasn't the word, but you live with someone who is doing it, and you slowly learn your own way of proceeding. So how questions are dangerous. You can't just say how, but that's part of what's involved, and it's going to have to be involved for philosophical praxis. Is there a bit more, Laura, I'm missing?
Ja, also die How-Fragen, die zielen ja immer auf etwas Allgemeines ab. Ja, also das jetzt sozusagen auf allgemeine Art und Weise beantworten zu können. Und die Idee der Meisterklasse ist, dass jeder eben seine eigene Originalität entwickeln kann.
Ja.
Und dafür gibt es eben, wie in der Beratung selber, das ist die genaue Parallele, wie in der Beratung selber gibt es dafür keinen allgemeinen Weg. Und deswegen ist auch jedes Treffen, das wir haben, vollkommen unvorhersehbar. Ist completely unpredictable. Also
Okay, so there's it's a bit too long. I forgot the first part, but I did get it. Sorry, how did you start there again? Please remind me, because I did remember.
So, when Rick is asking, how is he converting someone into?
The how question is always a general question, and an answer to it has to be general. But the problem within the individual counseling case, and also the problem for someone who wants to become a counselor, is an individual question and needs to be developed, individually and on their own. There's guidance, but it's one can't really answer the how question in a way.
Aber, und das wird er nicht sagen, aber ich sag's jetzt. Das ist, sorry, I can speak English, sorry. I will speak English right away. Sorry, Michael.
I do so much better translating you, though.
Yes. So
we work together, so I see.
Over the years, Gerd changed a little bit in his way of offering these courses. So what he and we are together offering now is, like Rick also said, it's much more really training. It's much more not talking about philosophical praxis in this or that way and trying to understand it in a theoretical way, but to really practice it. So we have a story. Someone is for example, someone in the group is telling a story, and we are trying to answer it on a level that's worthy to a philosophical practitioner in a way. And then we are commenting it. And so by that's only an example. It's not the secret, sorry, but that's much more the way of doing it now. So maybe.
Oder auch, einer solchen Gruppe in der Meisterklasse präsentiere ich eines meiner zahlreichen Probleme. Und jetzt schauen die anderen, wie sie damit zurechtkommen. Und ich kommentiere das zugleich. Dabei kann man auch lernen.
Was keine Simulation ist, das ist wichtig,
Englisch.
Michael, wenn du das übersetzt.
Michael, you're muted at the moment.
Oh, sorry. Yes, in some of these sessions that Gerd runs, and actually it's like the one I first saw in Mexico some years ago, Gerd presents his own real problems, philosophical problems, life problems, and comments on how people respond to them.
Yes.
And that is a way of learning how to do philosophical practice.
But it's very important that this is not a simulation. You cannot make some role model of philosophical praxis. You cannot. It's just not working.
Yeah.
So it's always really a real problem presented either by Gerd or someone else. And so we are always in this very serious and challenging case, in the situation of talking about this.
Yeah.
Yes, this is very important, and we do the same. We don't have role playing. That's something that often happens in psychology, but we are always dealing with something real, and the person who has the issue is speaking to it in the first person. So this is authentic, right? We get authenticity from this.
Yes, it's very important.
Yeah, very good. Glad to hear it. Okay. Let's move on. Patricia, Rick, you're okay for now, I think, and Patricia, and then Vonna. Go ahead and unmute. Welcome, Patricia. How are you?
Hello.
Hi, Patricia.
Fine, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So, well, vielen Dank, Gerd, für dass du heute haben bei uns bist. And thank you very much to Laura as well, who is helping us with the translation. And I met her last year in Rome. A couple of questions, and of course, Katharina, and in a way also our colleague, yes, they had anticipated my question, but the fundamental thing is your early affirmation, the differences between teaching philosophy and being a philosopher. This is fundamental.
Yeah.
And in these differences, it's the story of our university. You see, university, when they teach philosophy, I'm a doctor of philosophy from Milan, you come out of university and you are a good teacher of philosophy, okay? You know the history of philosophy, you can teach philosophy. Being a philosopher is totally different. So my question is, what do you think about, and Lou, in a way, said it's a problem to normalize philosophy into academy because it becomes something else, become an academical subject, which is not the practice that you underlined so much. And in a way, when I've been practicing for 13 years, but when I speak to my colleague, like medical doctors or psychiatrists or psychologists, they say, you see, philosophical counseling, okay, I believe that you're passionate about that, you're practicing, but there is no scientific method. There is no scientific proof. You don't make clinical trials. You don't make scientific trials. There is not an experimental group. There is not a control group. There are not quantitative research. There is just cases. And in a way, it's true, but that's a natural philosophical counseling. I mean, but this is a problem. And I'm asking you, what are the problems that you see in philosophical counseling? Because there are some problems. It's still a niche. You founded the movement in 1981, okay? 1981. So it's 45 years ago. And Lou with APPA, and Grimes and Peter Grimes, he founded in 10 years later, I think. So in the 90s, late 90s. So, but still it's a niche. We always have to justify ourselves. Who are you? What do you do? Because the mainstream is medicine, psychiatrist, and psychologist. And philosophical counseling is still a niche. Okay, if you have some ethical dilemmas, if you are a very healthy person, you want to discuss about death and life, you go to the philosophical counseling. But it's not a big business. That's my question. Because that's the question that my younger students, or they ask me. And really I say, okay, do it and we will see. But it's not enough. It's not enough. So there is a problem of methodology. And I'm against method, but scientific methodology is dominant, it's powerful. And I don't know, that's a big framework. So these are my questions.
Reminds me a little of Agathon taking over from Thrasymachus, but go ahead.
Thank you, Michael. Of Deutsch. I could speak Deutsch, actually.
Ja, gleich selber.
Properly. Nein, das ist schon besser, wenn ich es dir zumindest übersetze. Also sie ist ist in Mailand, ja, und sie praktiziert jetzt seit über 13 Jahren auch, und sie gibt dir vollkommen recht, dass es ein Riesenunterschied ist, ob man Philosophie lehrt und unterrichtet oder ob man selber Philosoph ist oder vielleicht sogar philosophischer Praktiker, was ja nochmal ein Unterschied ist. Ja. Und sie macht aber die Erfahrung, dass sie auch in sehr starke Rechtfertigungsnöte kommt gegenüber den Psychotherapeuten, den Ärzten und sonst was, weil sie sagen, naja, also ganz nett, was ihr macht, ja, also das ist ja schön, aber es gibt keine Kontrollgruppe, es gibt eigentlich keine Sicherheit, also sozusagen der ganze wissenschaftliche Sermon, sozusagen, den wir ja auch kennen. Ja. Und das ist das eine. Und sie hat übrigens auch gesagt, also ihr seid jemand, zu dem jemand kommt, der ein ethisches Dilemma oder so hat, was ja auch irgendwie eigentlich nicht das ist, was uns passiert, aber egal. Dass wir immer noch eigentlich eine Nische sind. Also das ist die Gründung 1980. Wer weiß eigentlich von uns sozusagen? Und wie du dieses Problem, was bei ihr, glaube ich, ein bisschen auch auf der Seele brennt, habe ich den Eindruck, wenn ich es richtig verstehe, was du dazu sagen.
Also das Erste ist, dass die philosophische Praxis in Rechtfertigungsnöten ist gut. Denn wenn wir uns rechtfertigen müssen, dann haben wir die Chance, über unsere Anliegen Auskünfte zu geben. Und die Philosophie ist eine Form des Rechtfertigens.
Should I?
Yes, please, because I was typing something in response to what was said.
So what he wants to say, and this is very important, that when we are in the position to justify ourselves as philosophical practitioners, we should welcome that, because philosophy is about the ability to justify.
Seit Sokrates.
Since Socrates. So that you could say, sorry, that's a bit my word, so that's our job. So that's what philosophy is always been about, and we should be proud to be in the position to justify, because this is always, when we are able to, so that's another question, but we should always welcome situations where we have the possibility to justify philosophical praxis, to make clear why it's necessary to people, not because we need it, because there is some need in the world for these kind of conversations.
Und das andere ist, dass ja gerade alle philosophisch interessanten Fragen solche sind, die wissenschaftlich nicht beantwortet werden können.
Ja.
Also was soll denn da die wissenschaftliche Kontrolle?
So there is not one philosophical question that can be answered by science. Not one.
Yeah.
You don't need to read Wittgenstein for that. So
what control group are you going to have for the question of life after death? I mean.
Sorry, I think we all agree it's a bit ridiculous.
Kontrollgruppen kann man da gebrauchen, wo man zählen kann. Aber die Philosophie ist keine Angelegenheit des Rechnens und Zählens und schon gar nicht des Zusammenzählens.
Yeah. So you can make a control group where you can count something, where you can work with numbers. That's not our case. That's not our business, and we don't want it. So what these, colleagues or these people meeting you are saying is, Maike, wie sagt man Vorwurf?
Yeah.
As an objection? Objection, I think?
Yeah, objection, yeah.
Objection, contradiction, yes.
So,
criticism, yeah.
Yes, it sounds like a critique. But it's no critique, because you can only say that if you did not understand what we are doing and what is the idea and the reality also of philosophical praxis.
Ja. Noch eine Frage. Welche Kontrollgruppe entscheidet, ob ein Gedicht gut ist oder nicht?
Which control group will decide whether a poem is good or not?
Exactly, or a symphony or a novel. That's
Right.
it's exactly right. And
So
you could look at it another way. Please say to Gerd, I mean, of course, we totally agree, but you could say that the world is already a control group because so many people are living without philosophy and they're not doing very well. So this is another kind of control group. Is it not? Please translate.
Ja, genommen ist die ganze Welt eine Kontrollgruppe.
Ja,
Und
ja,
wir
ja,
leben
ja.
ja schon alle ohne Philosophie. Und es geht nicht so sonderlich gut dabei.
Ja,
if I can also add something, I know there's another question there, but about this earlier, the point was made about seeing philosophy through philosophical practice as more aligned with the arts, music, novel making. So if you try the same kind of question there, why aren't your colleagues asking your novelist friends, hey, where's your control group for your for writing your novel or your symphony or something like that? So like and more broadly, it becomes an interpretive question, like how to interpret art and how to interpret life and how to interpret. And these hermeneutic questions are not subject to scientific resolution.
Exactly, exactly. So, Patricia, people who are asking this question, who are levying this criticism, they don't understand what philosophy is to begin with. If they understood what philosophy is, they wouldn't be criticizing this way. Okay, so I think this is a very we're on the same page now. We're sort of now running out of time, and we still have some questions. So may I ask Vana, please unmute and go ahead. I think you and Gerd know each other from a long way back.
Yes, we do.
Hi, Vana.
Yes. Thank you so much for all of your comments. And we were learning so much, and it's wonderful seeing you again. And Michael, thank you so much for translating for us, not only today, but Gerd's work. I have one question, which, well, actually, it's two questions interrelated. I was wondering, in your program, are you doing anything with group and organizational counseling? And also, if you would comment a little further on the relationship that you see between philosophy and political situations. I find in my work with prisons, in psychiatric hospitals, and with inmates in prisons, that many of their personal problems are related to the institutional problems. I mean, our mental health system in America is terrible, and that's why we have all this patients relapsing, because our psychiatric hospitals are dominated by the insurance companies and so on. And similarly, our sentencing issues politically make it impossible really for inmates to get the support that they need afterward, so that there's a great deal of recidivism and so forth. So I find in my work that I'm always working with the institutional culture as well as with the individual. And I wonder if you found that to be the case sometimes as well.
Die Frage ist erstens, das hat sie aber nur sehr kurz gemacht, ob du in den Lehrgängen auch Gruppen oder Organisationen trainierst oder berätst, also was, glaube ich, einfach ein Missverständnis ist. Und der zweite Punkt, der sehr viel ausführlicher auch von ihr dargestellt wurde, ist die Frage nach dem Verhältnis von philosophischer Praxis und auch sowohl Politik als auch bestimmten Institutionen, also gesellschaftlichen Designs, könnte man fast auch sagen. Sie selber, wenn ich das richtig verstanden habe, arbeitet viel auch mit Gefängnisinsassen, also auch in der forensischen Psychiatrie oder so. Und sie sagt, das sind natürlich jetzt nicht nur individuelle Probleme, die haben. Also wie ist das Verhältnis sozusagen von einem philosophischen Praktiker zu diesen auch gesellschaftlichen Problemen, die Menschen ja dann auch immer wieder eben auch in Probleme stürzen, zum Teil erst.
Ja, Bob, ich freue mich, dass wir auf die Art und Weise wenigstens uns wieder mal gehört haben.
Ja. So he's enjoying at least hearing you again.
Ja. Ich freue mich darüber, dass dieser Aspekt von dir wahrgenommen wird. Dass die institutionellen Probleme mit bedacht werden. Ich mache das nicht so sehr. Aber
Okay, so can I just start there? It pleases Gerd that you are observing these institutional problems.
Ja.
But for you,
Ja, er arbeitet ja nicht in diesem Bereich so. Er hat natürlich Organisationen, er hat große Organisationen beraten,
Ja.
aber er ist jetzt nicht in diesem Sinne tatsächlich in einer Beratungssituation mit den Institutionen.
yeah. So he appreciates you perceiving these things, but he's not working in those institutions himself. So.
Aber ich freue mich, dass ihr das macht.
Sorry. So he did counsel organizations, large organizations, also political committees and such things. He did that also, assurances and banks and all of these stuff.
Yeah.
So he of course he did that, but that's something that's quite different to what you are talking about, I think, because there are problems that are not have its origin not in an individual life, but also in some kind of society and of political context. Did I get that right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think so too. Vonna likes to work in difficult situations. She's very good at it. So she's really in a sense trying to help the clients of the system, but the system is not always constructed in a way that allows, for the proper help. So it's a different situation.
So,
Ja, das ist,
Thank you.
sorry, go ahead, Gerd.
tatsächlich ist es so, dass wir uns nur so weit verstehen, wie wir unsere Welt verstehen. Und das heißt heute auch, soweit wir die Institutionen verstehen. Und ganz gegenwärtig muss man sagen, soweit wir den Verfall oder den Zerfall, die Erosion von Institutionen verstehen.
Und die Aggressivität, die mit dem Zerfall auch einhergeht.
Eben.
Das ist auch ein Problem.
So I'm not sure I quite got the aphorism that began it, but that our self-understanding is connected with our understanding of the institutions. Was that the first part?
Understand yourself. It's in a way it's a hidden Goethe quotation. Actually, so he's saying that it's not possible to understand yourself without understanding the world you live in.
Yeah.
It's very essential also for us as philosophical practitioners not to focus only on one single life, but to have in mind the horizon everything is happening in. And we have some very dramatic developments in concerning the institutions because they are there's some do you say erosion? Do you
Erosion, exactly, yeah, erosion.
And when institutions are losing power, they get aggressive, and that's something also individuals are suffering in a very severe way and a very desperate way. And so of course it's not only impressive what you are obviously doing, but it's necessary for us as philosophers to keep that not only in mind, but to think about these relations in society.
So, and if I can just add something that partly the idea that Gerd mentioned is that we can't understand ourselves apart from understanding the very erosion of the institutions around us. And another point, just more general, not said here, but I think is part of the maybe cross-cultural communication that's needed here, is that German philosophy generally, the allusion to Goethe there, is much closer to social philosophy and an understanding of social institutions and our social reality than individualist analytic American philosophy tends to be, even those who emphasize the importance of social institutions, often as a critique of how the institutions are keep us unfree somehow. But when metaphysics died, social theory was born. So.
Okay, thank you for that, Michael. We have two more hands up. Let's try and fit in Patricia and then Claude. Patricia, please unmute. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you very much. And I have one very short question and then another slightly longer question. But
One at a time, please, okay?
Okay, and I'm very appreciative of the opportunity to have this discussion on really meta theory of what philosophical counseling is. I was wondering if in the history and the development of the ideas of philosophical counseling and or practice, the name Paul Tournier and his works on the meaning of person had any influence in the very early years.
No.
Okay. He was a great influence on my life as a very young student in both philosophy and theology. And he is a psychoanalyst from Switzerland. And I thought maybe there was some acknowledgement there.
Well, Patricia, why don't you put his name in the chat room if you have a moment to
Okay.
type that in, and then we could all have a look, okay? And the longer question, that was in short indeed. And the longer question.
This is short as well. I sometimes think of our method and our text as being the person that we are meeting with. Would you say that is a pretty responsible, accurate description of what we're doing?
That the person is the method and the text.
I did not really understand. So we could take the person as the method or the text?
So there's no method, there's just a person. There's no text, there's just the person.
I'm especially thinking a lot about some of the things that Sartre says in existential psychoanalysis about the discernment of the fundamental process of being.
Also Ihre Frage ist, ob es in der philosophischen Praxis denjenigen, der dort sitzt, eigentlich als Text zu begreifen und selber als Methode eigentlich zu begreifen. Also, und sie hat eine kleine Referenz eingebaut zu Sartres existenzieller Psychoanalyse, aber ich glaube, das wäre jetzt etwas, ja. Also.
Ja, wir müssen denken können, wie ein anderer denkt.
Ja.
We have to be able to think as another person thinks.
Ja, genau.
Yes.
Das müssen wir. Und aus diesem Denken und aus seiner Weltsicht müssen wir alles entwickeln, was zu seinem Besten und zu seiner Hilfe entwickelt werden muss.
So we have to see the person and how they see the world, and with an eye to helping them go forward in their world.
Yeah, so if I may add that it's not the point that we are, introducing strange thoughts to someone, but we are developing the thoughts they already have themselves, but they are, they're just small. They need to grow, and they need to. And when you are able to develop them, like you can do with the text, of course.
Yeah. Okay.
When you are able to develop them, then it's also a process of freedom that starts.
Okay, thank you very much for that answer. Very interesting. And Claude, welcome. Nice to see you. Please unmute.
Yeah, it's been a while. Thank you all for being here, everyone. My question is pedagogical. I teach at a community college where the great majority of my students are not going to become philosophers or majoring in philosophy. My question is, how can we modify the traditional way of teaching philosophy in such a way as to introduce some form of philosophical practice into our courses without losing our jobs?
Okay, also Claude Grattan hat eine eher pädagogische Frage. Er unterrichtet Philosophie in einem Community College und seine Studenten sind nicht vornehmlich Philosophen, also das ist sozusagen auch Fachfremde dabei. Und die Frage ist, wie man die Art, Philosophie zu lehren, so modifizieren könnte, dass es sinnvoll ist, dass es auch in diesem lebendigen Sinne ist und man dabei trotzdem nicht seinen Job verliert.
Ja, also ich glaube, der Unterschied ist folgender. Die übliche Art, Philosophie zu lehren, sieht so aus, dass wir lernen, Hegel zu verstehen. Oder wir lernen, Kant zu verstehen und so weiter. Aber es kommt darauf an, zu lernen, mit Hegel zu verstehen und mit Kant zu verstehen.
Ja, dann musst du
Okay,
essen.
so to put the distinction briefly, the usual way of teaching, the concern is to talk about Hegel, to teach about Hegel, or to teach about Kant,
To learn what
and to learn what they said, learn about them. Whereas the goal is to learn with Hegel and with Kant in this other way of thinking about the philosophical practice.
diese Erfahrung, dass die Welt ganz anders aussieht, je nachdem,
Ja.
wie man will.
Ja,
So that's the really exciting experience also for young adults can be not only young adults, also adults, of course, but the experience is that they are very, very enthusiastic when they are making the experience that the world can look completely different.
guck mal, wenn du die Welt mit den Augen Schopenhauers ansiehst, sieht die Welt ganz anders aus, als wenn du sie mit den Augen Hegels anschaust.
Ja.
Und das muss erlebt
Das
werden.
anders.
Das muss erlebt werden.
So in the students need to come to see how, you know, how to see the world the way Schopenhauer does, and to see the world the way Hegel does, and to have that these are new ways and differences from the way the world appears to the student originally. So they see these different ways of understanding the world that are entirely new.
So they discover new worlds with each
Yeah.
philosophy
Yeah.
they learn. So
Yeah.
we do not see philosophers, but we see with them totally different worlds
Also
and experience.
die meisten lernen immer nur, den einen Philosophen vom anderen zu unterscheiden. Da sagen sie immer den Ansatz von dem. Aber wir müssen lernen zu sehen, wie die Welt aussieht, wenn wir sie mit Kierkegaard sehen. Dann sehen wir sie ganz anders, als wenn wir sie mit einem technischen Verstand anschauen.
Mm-hmm. So when we see the world the way Kierkegaard sees the world, we see the world completely differently than if we look at it through a technical understanding.
So
And-
are you suggesting that it's trying to help our students to cultivate a certain flexibility in acquiring different perspectives?
Fragt, ob es dir darum geht, dass man den Studenten oder den Schülern eben eine gewisse Flexibilität der Perspektiven beibringen sollte.
Ja, diese vielfältige Möglichkeit zu denken ist wichtig. Die lernen wir, indem wir die unterschiedlichste Art zu denken bei den Philosophen kennenlernen.
Yeah,
Und die brauchen wir jetzt im Umgang mit den Menschen in der Beratung.
so to come to see the differences in the ways that people see the world, and the different philosophers have seen the world, is
It's a multitude of thinking that you can learn there. And when you learn it in reading or in understanding philosophers, you can also develop it for yourself. So you will gain such an amount of freedom also in thinking, you know? So.
Yes, and beyond this is one more step, just to Claude, which is everything that Gerd's saying, and how might this philosopher apply to your life now? What is there that is relevant to your situation, so they can internalize this and understand how it might be applicable to their own circumstances? Yes?
So, er sagt, und er stimmt allem zu, was du gesagt hast, möchte aber darüber hinaus noch sagen, es kommt eben darauf an, dass man auch sich die Frage stellt, inwiefern kann ich das jetzt auf mein Leben anwenden? Was ist davon anwendbar auf die Situation, in der ich bin und auf die Verfassung, in der ich bin?
Ja, natürlich. Darauf kommt es an.
Ja.
Ja.
So that's what it's about. Yes.
Dankeschön.
Thank you for asking, Claude. It's great to see you and try it. I hope you'll have some success with your students. You should talk to Rick because he has some similar students. I think he's very effective with his pedagogy and doing this kind of practical work. So, my friends, we have reached more than our time, and I want to thank Gerd for being so generous and forthcoming with his thoughts, and Michael and Laura for doing a very great job. This is not easy to do this consecutive translation, but thanks to everybody for coming and participating. It's been wonderful. We will produce this, and eventually the recording will go up on YouTube, and then more people will be able to see it. But Gerd, thank you so much. It's great to see you again, and I look forward to our next meeting in person. Auf Wiedersehen. Dankeschön. Auf Wiedersehen. Okay.
Bis bald, Lou.
Goodbye.
Vielen Dank.